Want to see what messages and food for thought this cool vintage deck has for us this week? Stay tuned! Hi, it's Leia. Welcome to this episode of Diaries of a Witchy Creative Life. Today we are doing our weekly reading. It seems like each week goes by pretty quickly. Well, here we are again. And this time around, we are using the Pulp Tarot by Todd Alcott. Look at this box. It's like an old book. I've mentioned it before, but I absolutely love vintage stuff, vintage themes. So, this is a pretty awesome deck as far as I'm concerned, art-wise. I shuffle my decks before I film any of my videos. I do a pretty thorough job. But, you know, just wanted to give this a little bit of love before we pick our 3 cards for the week. I am actually sitting in a pretty awkward position to be shuffling the cards on camera. Sometimes I end up bumping into the light and disrupting what would be an otherwise pretty good shot. But I figured it's a nice little thing to do at the beginning of a reading, so I still do it nevertheless. And here, let me straighten these out a little bit before we get started. Okay, now we can dive in. For anyone who's new here, the readings on this channel are not predictive. The focus is on doing shadow work, on healing, inner growth, self-awareness, and we don't follow any spread here. We simply look at the cards individually and see what we can ask ourselves based on the meanings of the cards. Let's take a look at card number 1. It is number 19 from the Major Arcana, the Sun. One of the most positive cards that you could ever get from the tarot. Not that I think that any of the so-called negative cards are really quote-unquote bad, mind you. And even the positive cards have a shadow side, so, you know, that balances all that out. But on the surface, the immediate meanings of the Sun are very positive. After all, it's about love, inspiration, joy, beauty, making your dreams come true, optimism, abundance, creativity. That's like a checklist right there of totally awesome stuff. So I have a few different thoughts here. Oh, and yeah, I don't get to say it all the time, but journal keepers, please feel free to take inspiration from these videos for your prompts. There are a lot of journaling prompts that we come up with here. So okay, a few thoughts on the Sun. How can you celebrate yourself or your life right now? And for some of you, if there aren't existing opportunities for something that excites you, maybe you can use your enthusiasm to get something going. Let's say right now, you're feeling super excited about doing art, but you don't see any opportunities that work for you. Nothing, at least, along the lines of what you're specifically looking for. It's not until next season or something like that. Well, an idea for you is, why don't you find an instructor and other students who would love to take that same class? And if you already have a venue for it, as in a physical venue that you can use for it, or you're savvy with setting things up online and you don't mind doing online lessons, why not put something like that together? Now, on the more evidently shadow worky side, here's another question. How might you have been using optimism to hide your fears or worries? An example could be someone hears pretty devastating news about a loved one's health, but they don't want to be what they consider sad or mopey around their family or their friends. So they put on a very cheery facade, even though it takes a lot of energy to do that, and they find themselves so exhausted at the end of the day. Because number one, not only have they been pushing their true feelings back, but number two, on top of everything, they're putting on an act. And no, I am not saying to just let all your feelings pour out of you to the point where you're lashing out at someone or yelling at them because you're not in a great mood. But at least if you have some awareness, even if you don't really want to show others what is 100% up with you, you can be honest with yourself and still do the inner work necessary to process what you're feeling instead of hiding from it. And here's one more thought about the sun that I'm going to throw out before we move on to card number 2. And it is kind of related to the question that I asked prior, but you can take it differently too if you want. How might you have been allowing yourself to live in toxic positivity? Toxic positivity, if you've never heard of it before, is when we do our best to be happy or to display positive emotions at the expense of what's truly going on or what we are actually feeling. Okay, one example is someone currently battling a bout of depression might have heard it said so many times, crying is not acceptable. Being sad is not acceptable. And so they sweep all that under the rug, pretend it doesn't exist. But of course it does. Pretending doesn't make it go away. And it's pretty unfortunate, but sometimes someone going through something like that, if they don't seek help from a qualified professional, or even deal with it in such a way where they can vent or process, it could end up fatally. I'm sure you've heard stories. There's a lot going around these days about people who aren't able to handle their depression and they take matters into their own hands. So that's something to think about right there. And it isn't just for us to check in with ourselves, but also on those that we love and care about. Sometimes those who seem to be the happiest have so much more going on beneath the surface. Let's move on to card number 2. We have the King of Cups. I was doing my best to get it in there where it looks like it's standing up straight so that it doesn't look crooked on screen, but I did not succeed, so let's adjust that. There. And while we're at it, I'm gonna fix the Sun card too. The King of Cups is nurturing, emotionally intelligent, loving, diplomatic, compassionate, a leader who is able to balance their head with their heart. My question for you is, which of those traits most stands out to you right now? Which of those might you be feeling inspired to cultivate in yourself right now? It's possible that a situation in your life calls for it. It could be that you've reached a new level of maturity where your next personal growth project just happens to involve developing one of those traits in you. For example, the part about a leader who knows how to balance their head with their heart. Maybe that's something that you feel called to do at this stage of your growth. Maybe you've always been very sensitive, very feeling and emotional, and now you want to add more of your head, your logic, your reasoning into the mix. For some of you out there, this could refer to looking for somebody with those traits to be the positive influence that you need in your life right now. Because it could be for someone who's lived in their head most of their life. Now they want to be more of a feeling person. So maybe you have a friend or a mentor that you recognize has the traits of the King of Cups, or maybe even just a trait or two of the King of Cups. And if they're willing, you could ask them questions about their approach to life that relates to those traits. Maybe learn more from them in that way. And for others, maybe you can start a practice that focuses on developing which of those traits stands out to you. And this is just an example. I'm not telling you to go do it if it doesn't resonate. But someone might feel called to start volunteering and be more of a nurturing person. It's possible too that you already recognize some of these traits in you, but you had to go in a direction in life where you had to push those aside. For example, for someone in their youth as a lawyer, They had to focus more on being logical, and they developed their reasoning skills. But now, they no longer practice law and are focused on parenthood. The skills they've developed in their lawyer life could still come in handy, but with a feeling aspect thrown in there as well, such as by being diplomatic. And maybe they can give themselves permission now for that softie, who they truly are inside, to come out. So as I always say, these are just examples, and there's a variety of people who watch these videos, so if you don't relate to any of them, find your equivalent to that. It's even possible, when I give the card meanings, that you have an entirely different takeaway that I don't mention. In which case, why not journal about that or explore that? Let us take a look now at our last but not least card of the week, the Queen of Pentacles. The Queen of Pentacles is grounded, generous, down to earth, and since material wealth and abundance is one of the meanings of this card, the opposite, which is being materialistic or overly so, could be true as well. And so let me ask you, at this point in your life, how might you need to heal your relationship with wealth and abundance? Do you still carry around old beliefs that you're not worthy of good coming into your life? Or that you won't amount to anything, or that there's a ceiling on your abundance, and you can only go so far? If so, now would be a good time to examine where the root of that might have come from. And I'm sure some of you already know the root. Maybe in your childhood or upbringing, it was hammered into your head that you'll always struggle, even if it was simply because that was the reality you came from, even if nobody told you in so many words. But if everyone around you was struggling and you lived in that for many years, it could be wired into you to continue believing it. Well, now that we're exploring it, here's a good time for you to sit down with yourself and see if you want that area of your life to improve. Because if you do, even if it takes years, even if it can take some time, there are ways for us to adjust the path that we are on, so that it leads to something different than what it would lead to if we didn't make that adjustment. That's about being more conscious or intentional, rather than allowing our path to go whichever way it will if you don't do anything about it. And for others, the question might be more along the lines of, how might you have allowed yourself to become overly materialistic? And no, it doesn't make you a horrible person to want better for yourself than where you came from, or to want better than what you currently have. So let's define overly materialistic as you prioritize material objects, material accomplishments, more than your health and well-being, more than your relationships. And some people even have an addiction to material things, whether it's being a shopaholic or acquiring all the latest and the greatest. And if that applies to you, see how it may be harming you. Being a collector in and of itself, there isn't anything the matter with that. But when there's obsession, when other people get hurt, when you get hurt, all because of your pursuit of material objects, that's when you might want to take a look at what's going on here. See if you need to get help for your addiction. Or for others, simply realizing that yes, there is a problem here already helps them make the necessary changes so they don't keep going further down that road. Another question I'm going to leave with you, inspired by the Queen of Pentacles, is how can you be more resourceful? The Queen of Pentacles knows how to work with what she has and turn it into something else. So is there anything right now that's at your disposal that you can work with? Some people, for example, might get the idea to start a business based off of their crafty hobbies. You may never have considered it before, but now you realize, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, or I want to get better at it and I can learn to do even more with this and sell stuff. And that is what I am leaving you with for this weekly reading. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. For those of you who resonate with it, I'm glad that you found it insightful and helpful. I'll be back at the end of next week with another weekly reading video, but in the meantime, there will be other inner awareness, personal growth, healing, shadow work type videos here on this channel. So if you enjoy this content, please subscribe if you haven't yet, so that you don't miss a thing. Until next time, take care of yourself. I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now. More Diaries of a Witchy Creative Life are coming soon.